They say that public speaking is the #1 fear amongst human beings. Dying is #2. In Australia, snakes is #3, spiders is #4. So fear of public speaking, getting on stage in front of a group of people, is significant across the populations of the world. Good morning, everyone. Peter Dew's my name, and I want to talk to you about 6 tips to cope with stage fright. It can be called performance anxiety. It can be called fear or nerves before public speaking. This webinar is specifically for public speaking, not for acting, not for music performers. It's about when you get on stage to speak. So welcome. Let me share my screen. Six tips to cope with stage fright when public speaking. And it is a common thing. People walk on stage, their mind drains, they have a freeze, they bring in all sorts of nervous twitches, non-verbal communication, they don't know where to look, their voice quivers, maybe their face goes red. So I'm going to share with you 6 tips to cope with stage fright. I'm a public speaking trainer and coach, and my passion is giving you the power, the skills to be more effective and, of course, confident every time you stand before an audience. Ask questions as we go. You can put some stuff in the chat box. You can email me after this presentation. Take notes, make comments, and importantly, think about your own circumstances. Is there anything you're going to do differently? Is there anything you could have done in the past that would have made you more confident, less fearful before walking on stage? Just to let you know, I will be in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia on the 16th, 17th of May. So about 8-9 days' time. And I'm going to be speaking in front of 450 people. And I have significant anxiety and significant nerves. So some of what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to apply direct to my own situation. So does being nervous, does having vulnerability, does stage fright or pre-performance anxiety, does that make us appear weak, afraid, or not up for the job? I've just disclosed to you that I'm a bit worried about this 450-person conference presentation in Malaysia. Does that make me weaker or afraid to do the job? And I love this little graph. Some people see public speaking as a threat, but it's an asset, as we know, because it's how we communicate. You have to public speak to get your job. That's the job interview. And in all of that, there's this vulnerability. And in the intersection is the risk. So should we share our vulnerability? Is there a risk with us sharing our vulnerability? Thanks for inviting me today. I'm actually a little bit nervous about job interviews. Thanks for inviting me to speak to the conference. It's a privilege to be here. I'm a little bit nervous. Is there a risk in sharing my vulnerability? I would suggest you should, there's not a risk. I should suggest, yes, you should share your vulnerability. Vulnerability is powerful. Vulnerability is the lessons you've learned, the self-doubt. Vulnerability is the adversity you've overcome, the surviving, the thriving, the striving, despite all odds. Vulnerability is getting knocked down 10 times and standing up 11 times. I love these quotes. First one from Sigmund Freud: out of vulnerability will come your strength. And Brene Brown, who writes about courage and vulnerability, and in her book, Daring Greatly, she talks about how armoring up, in other words, hiding behind a wall. Looking tough, no nerves here, I'm as confident as anything. How that denies us the opportunity to reveal our true selves, to face uncertainty and the risk of emotional exposure, and to utilize our courage. And with courage comes success and unlocked potential. Courageous people deal with their fears, their self-doubts, they deal with their vulnerability. And it's how we demonstrate our own compassion. Helps us connect and build rapport. So I, as a person who stutters, I, as a public speaking trainer with fear, can empathize with you, can connect with you around your fear, around your uncertainty around public speaking. So yes, vulnerability is okay. So if you put that in context of stage fright, performance anxiety, nerves before public speaking, then it's okay to have those. And many actors, high-profile actors, still report nerves, anxiety before going on stage. And they understand it puts it into their peak performance mode. So while nerves and anxiety are valuable in putting you into that peak performance mode, it's really important that we still have some tools to calm ourselves down and to deal with stage fright. The singer, Adele, that beautiful voice, her words, she gets shitty scared before every performance. Performance anxiety, stage fright, then goes on stage and absolutely wows the crowd with her voice. So here's my 6 tips. The first one is become proficient at practicing your style of deep breathing or your style of relaxation. And good lower diaphragmatic breathing is better than this shallow nervous breathing up top. So what can you do to breathe deep and just calm you down, that sense of calmness? Some people throw in a visualization with it as well. I'll talk about that later on. I have one particular breathing exercise that I can do, and it's called 4 by 4 by 4 by 4. Breathe in for 4 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. Breathe out for 4 seconds. Hold that exhale for 4 seconds. Breathe in for 4 seconds. It's also called circular breathing or box breathing, but 4 by 4 by 4 by 4. That slows your rate of breathing down to 4 to 5 breaths per minute. 4 to 5 breaths per minute. That is a great deep breathing exercise, creates a sense of relaxation and helps you calm down just that little bit before you go on stage. And here's the thing, nobody knows you're doing it. Some people do shoulder shrugs as relaxation. I'm feeling tension around my neck. A speech pathologist has taught me to practice horse blows. So you know how a horse blows and its lips go something like this. I need to put my hands up to cover the spray of saliva when you do. But when you do those horse blows, the lips vibrate and you've just done a quick relaxation for your mouth. Here's the question. How many of you warm up your voice before going on stage? Certainly the actors do, certainly Adele does and other singers, but we as speakers, or when you're running a workshop or when you've got a wedding speech, we just walk on stage and think this complex apparatus, the vocal folds, the voice box, the breathing, all of that's just going to automatically work. We know that when we're going to play a game of netball or a game of football, or we're going to go to the gym and work out really hard, one of the first things to do is to stretch. If you're going to go for a jog or a run, you'd probably do some warm-up stretching, a slow walk, slow jog, then you move into the faster running. Yet we open our mouth and expect our voice to come out beautifully relaxed straight away. Newsreaders, TV journalists warm up their voice before the TV goes live. They do singing, they do some humming, they do some tongue twisters just to get everything ready and in place so that when they go on stage, when the TV camera comes on, there's less chance of this complex vocal apparatus that creates voice, less chance of it failing as a result of our nerves or performance anxiety. Do warm up your voice. Visualize yourself delivering a successful speech and focus on the positive outcomes. What's going to be the benefits for the people in the room? And visualize in your mind, visualize your opening 30 seconds, learn it, script it. What are you going to say to grab attention? I'm starting with a story, a family story that I know I can tell without making a mistake. And it's my story, so no one can say, no, that's not true, that's not accurate, hang on, you've misrepresented that, this is what happened. And that's going to grab attention, but it's going to be that strong platform for which I can go into the other content, which I'm not so confident will be successful. So by visualizing my opening and getting that strong and visualizing my call to action, I've kind of already nailed the opening and nailed the conclusion in my mind. One of the things I will do in Kuala Lumpur is I will arrive early. I'll be there 2 days before and I'm staying at the venue of the conference. I will find out when I can have access to the room, 5:30 a.m. in the morning, 6 a.m. in the morning, and I'm going to walk on that platform. And that's going to help me look at those 450 empty chairs and visualize the crowd. I'm also going to be comfortable with the platform. How much depth do I have? How far can I move forward? How far can I move back? I do not want to fall off the stage if it's a raised platform. So while this is also allowing me to visualize, I'm also familiarizing myself with that auditorium, with that conference room where I will be presenting to 450 people. Do that yourself. When you visualize, you can visualize in your mind, but you can also arrive early and stand on the actual platform, the actual podium that you'll be presenting on, and do your visualization there. Just helps you prepare, helps you to get ready. The other thing to deal with stage fright, performance anxiety, is to rehearse your performance or rehearse your speech over and over until you feel confident. I have practiced 6 times so far. There'll be at least another 6 times I practiced before. It's a 30-minute presentation. So that's 3 hours of preparation already, and definitely another 3 or more before I take the stage. I want to get my content so well rehearsed that I don't have to worry about the content. Instead, I can focus on the stage. I can focus on the audience. I can stay out of my mind trying to remember what's happening, what's going on, and I can be fully present. So the practice and the rehearsal helps me to get comfortable with the material in my mind. I will have maybe a cheat sheet, one A4 paper, one A4 piece of paper, upon which I'll have my notes, but that'll be off to the side in case I need to refer to something. And that's my safety net. I mentioned about visualizing and going on stage and visualizing on stage. Part of going on stage is rehearsing the actual mechanics. So where am I going to stand to make eye contact for this point? And where am I going to stand on that platform to engage a different part of the audience? This is the mechanical rehearsal. I don't always do that, but if I can get on that platform and visualize, I'll also use it as a practice from a practical perspective, from a stage mechanics perspective, so that I'm already got that down and I can now focus on deep breathing, relaxing, and I can tick those worries off. What if the stage doesn't work? It's okay. What if there's some steps I might trip over? That's okay. I've been there, I've checked it out, so I can remain calm with all of that. Focus on your audience's needs rather than your own fears or insecurities. I can direct my attention in two places. I can be 100% focused on the audience, serving the audience. My presentation around inclusion and diversity is purely for the audience. Or I can focus in my head, what if they don't like me? What if I muck up? Gee, I hope this is okay, which means I can't be focusing 100% on the audience. So I've learned over time to silence my internal critic, silence what's going on in my mind, and be 100% present for the people in the room. And when that happens, the whole room lights up. You see people nodding. You see people a little bit perplexed. Maybe I need to explain that point a little bit more. And you'll definitely see people going, and you know you've put your foot in it, you've done something wrong, and you may have to take a step back and acknowledge, look, maybe not everyone's going to agree with me, before you move on to the rest of your content. This is what being present and focusing on your audience does. It takes you out of your head, enables you to be present for the audience, and the nerves might still be there, but the audience will see that you're focusing on them, for them, and you're less worried about yourself. So my tough love is always, sorry, it's not about you, it's about your audience. Serve your audience, and your fears and your insecurities may come along with the journey, but they'll be lessened because you won't have time to think about them because you're 100% thinking about your audience. Use positive self-talk, also known as affirmations, to boost your confidence and remind yourself of your strengths. Dr. Susan Jeffers, in her book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, talks about affirmations as the way of neutralizing negative self-talk. My negative self-talk about Malaysia, this is going to be scary, 450 people. My positive self-talk, wow, I'm really privileged to have been invited to speak at the Malaysian conference. I'm really privileged. They must think I've got something to share. I mentioned a saying, get knocked down 10 times, stand up 11 times. That's an affirmation. Better to have shared your truth and be rejected than to not share your truth because of fear, self-doubt, imposter syndrome. That's another affirmation. You're a champion because you had the courage to speak up. what positive self-talk can you use to neutralize some of that self-doubt? There is a science called cognitive behavioral therapy that psychologists use to help people deal with particular issues in their life, some irrational thoughts, certainly around stuttering. What's the worst thing that could happen? Will you die if you stutter? Well, no. All right. If the worst thing that could happen is not that you die, then you really don't have a lot to worry about. So this is positive self-talk. This is your affirmations. You're a champion for having the courage to speak up. And I spoke about vulnerability, and from vulnerability comes courage. So when you agree to do something and then self-doubt or stage fright or performance anxiety kicks in, just remind yourself, you are a champion for having the courage to agree to do this, to having a crack at that promotion, that job, for agreeing to fill in for someone at the last moment and step up and speak at a Toastmasters meeting when you really haven't prepared all that well and you're feeling a bit nervous. You're a champion for having a crack. And remember that it's okay to make mistakes. Susan Jeffers shares this little model in her Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I'll just draw a little model for you. And what Susan Jeffers says is, if we look at time on this axis and we look at knowledge on this axis, and that could be experience, wisdom, learning. Unfortunately, as time goes by, we'd all love our knowledge and our wisdom to go up like that. Unfortunately, that is not the way that it happens. And Susan Jeffers talks about learning happening like this. Oops. Oopsie-daisy. Sugar. Uh-oh. No, not again. And this is the true adult learning cycle. And when we go down, it looks like we've made a mistake, but we haven't really made a mistake. Susan Jeffers says, think of all of those as life's lessons. As life's lessons. So in other words, we just don't gradually get better and better and better. We're going to stretch, do some public speaking, then we're going to get some negative feedback that we've done something wrong, something culturally inappropriate. We forgot to acknowledge traditional landowners. Sugar. And then we're going to learn from that. So as we move forward, we will always find out, so whose land am I standing on today? Are there any cultural nuances that I need to be aware of? And in Malaysia, there are cultural nuances that I need to be aware of, and my language needs to change. So remember that it's okay to make a mistake, and we use these, and I don't call them mistakes, and we use these lessons, these life lessons, to grow, to improve, to unlock our true potential. And making mistakes requires vulnerability, because we all think we're perfect, but we're not. So with your stage fright, with your performance anxiety, remember it's okay to make a mistake. And you're going to learn from this. My life is a combination of many, many, many lessons. No mistakes, just many, many, many lessons. So in summary, practice your deep breathing, your relaxation techniques. Think about your voice. Visualize yourself. I like to walk on stage and visualize my opening, visualize my closing, visualize my audience. Rehearse, practice, practice, practice. Practice makes perfect. It was Tony Robbins who said repetition is the mother of skill. Focus on your audience needs. Get less in your head and more on your audience. Your presentation is not about you anyhow. It's about serving the audience. Use positive self-talk, affirmations to reduce that self-doubt, that negative self-talk. replace it with something positive, something that you've rehearsed, something that resonates with you. Better to have tried and failed than never had the courage to have a go. And remember, it's okay to make a mistake. No one is perfect. What do I have coming up? Next webinars, time management in public speaking. Let me see. I've got 5 minutes to go, so this webinar will be finished on time. So many times speakers go into the next speaker's time. I have 30 minutes in a packed 7-hour conference across 2 days with another 20 odd speakers. I must not speak into that other speaker's time or into the lunch break. How do you manage your time? And how do you make that most of that 30 minutes? Sometimes you've only got 20 minutes. How do you make the most of that? And Q&A, do you speak for 30 minutes and then say, are there any questions? No, you don't. If you want Q&A, you've got to stop at 20 and say, are there any questions? 3rd of July, tips to improve your vocal quality and sound. I've had a bit of a raspy voice and a cough. And that doesn't add to the vocal quality. So how do you deal with things like that? Certainly, do have water that you should drink before, but you are allowed to sip water during a presentation. Those 2 free webinars, one in June and one in July. Workshops, 2 in Karratha, 31st of May, 1st of June, presentation skills and off the cuff, and then over to Bendigo in July, presentation skills. Peter Dew's my name. Any questions, any comments, any further information, email me, peter@peterdew.com.au, give me a call, jump on the website. And remember, this webinar is recorded should you wish to review it. In conclusion, stage fright, performance anxiety, nerves before public speaking occur for many people. It's normal. But there are some tips you can do to reduce that stage fright and give you a little bit more confidence. Practice, visualize, rehearse, focus on your audience, positive self-talk, affirmations. You're a champion for having a go, Peter. Congratulations, Peter, on being invited to speak at the Malaysian conference. And will I make a mistake? You bet. And it's okay to make mistakes. This is Peter Dew, public speaking trainer and coach, wishing you well on your speaking journey.